Massive waves of explosions hit Lebanon this week. On Wednesday, Israeli intelligence wing allegedly booby-trapped walkie-talkies in advance and then delivered them to Hezbollah as part of the militia's emergency communication system, which was supposed to be used during the war with Israel, sources said. On Tuesday, they blew up thousands of pager devices used by members of Hezbollah's military units and institutions. The attacks obviously damaged Hezbollah's military command and control system. In the first wave, 12 people died and 2,800 were injured, including 2 children, and in the second, at least 20 people were killed and more than 450 wounded, the health ministry said. On Wednesday, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said, quote, "We are at the start of a new phase in the war. It requires courage, determination and perseverance," unquote. He made no mention of the exploding devices, but praised the work of Israel's army and security agencies, saying the results are very impressive. Thailand has said it will prosecute 8 former security personnel over the 2004 Tak Bai killings, in which 78 protesters suffocated after they were arrested and piled on top of each other in army trucks. The incident remains one of the deadliest in the long-running conflict in Thailand's predominantly Muslim southern provinces. The protesters died after they were arrested at a rally outside a police station and then stacked on top of each other in the back of Thai military trucks. The government at the time, under Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, expressed regret at the deaths but denied any wrongdoing. Vietnamese billionaire business tycoon Truong My Lan, who is already facing the death penalty, is now additionally facing new charges in the case of financial fraud. Lan, the chairwoman of real estate developer Van Thin Phat Holdings Group, is facing charges of obtaining property by fraud, money laundering and illegal cross-border money transfers, state media reported. Lan is one of the high-profile business executives and state officials jailed in the communist-ruled country's years-long anti-graft campaign known as Blazing Furnace for committing what is called the country's biggest fraud. She is accused of illegally raising 30 trillion dong, that amounts to $1.2 billion, from issuing bonds, illegally transferring $4.5 billion into and out of Vietnam, and laundering 445 trillion dong, or $18.1 billion. Again, after last week, North Korea tested its military prowess on Thursday by testing a new tactical ballistic missile using super-large warheads and modified cruise missiles. According to a state news agency, KCN reported that leader Kim Jong-un called for stronger conventional weapons and nuclear capabilities. The tests to improve weapons capabilities are required because of the grave threat posed by outside forces to the security of the country, said Kim. Last week, North Korea also unveiled a uranium enrichment facility in its first such public report. During the trial of Giselle Pellicot's rape case, which shook the entire world, her husband Dominique Pellicot has admitted to drugging her into a state of a deep coma and inviting strangers he met in online chat rooms to rape her between 2011 and 2020. 50 men aged between 26 and 74 are accused of raping the French woman after she was drugged by her husband. Giselle, who said she had not consented, has bravely requested that the trial be open to the public to raise awareness about the use of drugs to commit rape and sexual abuse. Hello, you're with me on Global Compass, the weekly show that updates you on all that has been happening around the world. In our next segment, let's take a look at some of the stories that were specifically featured on Strat News Global. Ahead of his meeting next week with Prime Minister Modi, former American President and 2024 presidential candidate Donald Trump has slammed India as a very big abuser in trade, but called Modi a fantastic man. Modi is visiting the United States from Saturday to attend a Quad Group, Australia, India, Japan and the US leaders summit hosted by US President Joe Biden, where he is expected to meet Donald Trump as well. Both the leaders shared close proximity in Trump's first term. Prime Minister Modi is also scheduled to attend the United Nations General Assembly in New York and meet with members of the Indian American community. Malaysian authorities on Thursday arrested the chief executive and other senior managers of an Islamic conglomerate. They are accused of running charity homes where children were allegedly sexually abused amid a widening police dragnet in the case. Nasiruddin Muhammad Ali is the head of Global Ikhwan Services and Business Holdings. Police say his firm is linked to a banned religious sect. They say he was detained with 18 people in an early morning raid on 4 residential premises in Kuala Lumpur. Even after China's consecutive demands, the United States has refused to withdraw its mid-range missile system deployed in the Philippines. The Typhoon system, which can be equipped with cruise missiles capable of striking Chinese targets, was brought in for joint exercises earlier this year, both countries said at the time, but has remained there. The Southeast Asian archipelago, Taiwan's neighbor to the south, is an important part of US strategy in Asia and would be an indispensable staging point for the military to aid Taipei in the event of a Chinese attack. China and Russia have condemned the first deployment of the system to the Indo-Pacific, accusing Washington of fueling an arms race. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry announced on Wednesday that it has imposed countermeasures against 9 US military-linked companies in response to US arms sales to Taiwan effective immediately. The Chinese foreign minister's statement confirmed that any property these firms hold within China would be frozen. Furthermore, organizations and individuals within China are now prohibited from engaging in any transactions with the targeted companies. These actions are part of China's ongoing efforts to counter US military support to Taiwan, with Chinese views as a violation of its sovereignty. Some concerning news from the environmental front. India has been identified as contributing to a fifth of global plastic pollution, a study published in the journal Nature last week found. India burns roughly 5.8 million tons of plastic each year and releases another 3.5 million tons of plastic into the environment, land, air or water as debris. Cumulatively, India contributes 9.3 million tons of plastic pollution into the world annually, significantly more than the countries next in this list: Nigeria with 3.5 million tons, Indonesia with 3.4 and China 2.8. This is due to India's unmanaged waste problem. World Cleanup Day was on Friday, 20th September, and we at Global Compass decided to get some insight on how India's unwanted waste can be managed and how plastic pollution is a global collective responsibility. I spoke with Roshan Rai from Zero Waste Himalayas, a Darjeeling-based NGO which works on issues on environment and social equity. Here is an excerpt from that interview. This is quite disheartening news about India contributing the world's fifth of plastic pollution. However, it is not the largest producer. So, what exactly is the dichotomy and where is the problem exactly? Because the University of Leeds has talked of unmanaged plastic or unmanaged, plastic pollution. So, can you give us a brief overview of that report and what exactly it means?
So I'd like to start off by saying it's a kind of a problematic report, and how the report came just before the Busan INC as such, and so I think I know it made a lot of news, and certain circles, especially the environmental circle, it made quite a lot of news, and it also made popular news because when India gets ranked for such a negative thing, you do get to have a lot of circulation, and in also some sense an acknowledgement how big the challenge is. But I say it's a problematic report because it has a very small definition, of what it is trying to measure, and it does not look at the history and the legacy of waste, and it seems to look at plastic pollution from the perspective of after it is thrown away. It does not consider production, so I think the dichotomy that you talk about is, even with being less a country with low production, we are topping, or they say we are topping the plastic pollution scenario in the world as such, So I think there is a huge challenge in how it is framed, how it is placed, and it does not look at one plastic pollution. Pollution is right from the beginning of extraction and production itself, and not just when it's thrown away. Plastic pollution as a narrative is not a waste pollution alone. There are also issues of how the biggest producing and consuming countries of the world have been sending plastic waste to even countries like India, and Malaysia, and Indonesia, and Vietnam. So I think it is a very problematic report as such. Maybe that's how I'd like to say it. So the
Right.
dichotomy is, yeah, they just looked at it as waste, using waste
And
as, yeah,
the global south, global north divide. I mean, it is there
exactly,
everywhere, and even over
exactly.
here.
Exactly. And then they also look at per capita consumption and where does their plastic waste go to. So they have been shipping plastic waste to developing countries for a long time. And when 2017, when China said no, that's when we realized that it is such a big problem. But I think I just wanted to add one more point. Like if you look at 2017, there was a very important report that came out which kind of said only 9% of all plastic ever produced has been recycled, and the rest have been either incinerated or in some form or the other lying in the environment. So if you just look at today and then call India to be the worst polluter without considering the history as well as the lack of the that you can't look at just managing plastic waste, right? You have to look at production, and also all that we produced, majority of it is still lying in the environment, which means you can't use a single small segment and say this nation has produced, especially a developing country like ours. Yeah.
When it comes to, again, the global south, when it comes to Asia, we have how do we balance this? How do we actually make this happen, that we consume or we use less and less plastic, and we are very mindful of sustainable choices? How can we actually do that?
That's a
Tough,
really
tough.
deep question, right? I think
Yeah,
for me, let me just try and break it down a bit, right?
sure.
So I think like you say, individual awareness is important, individual action is important because it all adds up. But I think fundamentally, if you look at India, we have a very interesting plastic waste management rules, which was, I think, really forward thinking. So it's the extended producer responsibility rules 2022. So this is the first time we actually have, under the plastic waste management rules, calling out companies to take full responsibility of all the plastic they produce, and they are very clear, it's producers, importers, and brand owners. So imagine if this actually really happened. So for me, I think that is a very powerful regulatory statement, right? I know it's not being implemented. There are problems in definition of single use, and also at the end of it, I think it also, the extended producer responsibility does not look at designing out, like you say. It should design out the unnecessary plastic from production. That is not happening. But I think you asked a very deep fundamental question about what do we do. I think plastic pollution is actually intersects with climate crisis also, right? It's pretty much it is the pretty much the same. And how did we reach here is, I think we have had a very limited definition of growth is and what happiness is, and we have been constantly bombarded with products, right? And so for me, I think we actually really need to really redefine what sustainability is, not because it is the cool thing to do, but for me, it is the right thing to do.
You can watch the entire interview on Strat News Global on Tuesday. Please write in your comments. Don't forget to like and share this video. I hope you have subscribed to this channel and have made sure your friends and family who are interested in foreign affairs have done so as well. And it's time to wrap up this week's Global Compass. But before we let you go, here is a glimpse from a concert celebrating Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday that went by on Tuesday, 17 September, featuring a diverse lineup of musical talent and tributes, with proceeds supporting the Carter Center's international programs. Performances included the B-52s, singer B.B. Winans, and global music icon Angelique Kidjo. Carter was the 39th President of the USA between 1977 to 1981. He also received the Nobel Prize in 2002 for his decades of untiring effort to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts and to advance democracy and human rights to promote economic and social development. Watch a few glimpses from the performances, and I will see you next week. Till then, take care.